Joe, now this is very important. Mummy and Daddy have decided they don't want to live together anymore. Daddy's going to live with Auntie Emma. But whatever happens, Mummy and Daddy want you to know something. It's all your fault.
Oh God, I love this show.
Oh yes, it's for these moments that we live and breathe. Now on BBC Three, it's dark, it's a little bit sick, and by God, it's brilliant. With strong language and upsetting scenes, brand new Monkey Dust.
Hello, good evening. And can I just say what an honour it is for me to be surrounded by so much human misery.
Okay, listen up, you f***ing pussies. I'm gonna keep this short, because frankly, you're not worth the shit on my shoe.
Monkey Dust is truly unique. I've never come across anything quite like it, and if you know of anything like it, hit me up, because this stuff is my crack. The creation of comedy writer Harry Thompson, the first producer of Have I Got News For You, and his longtime writing partner Shaun, this animated black comedy ran on BBC Three, the same channel that now brings us these hot takes, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried that BBC Three. It's rubbish.
Anyway, it ran for 3 seasons between 2003 and 2005, and has never been rebroadcast since, for reasons we'll get into later, but may have something to do with it being one of the darkest, most brutal and most irreverent comedy shows ever produced, with jokes involving, among other things, divorce, suicide, violence, bestiality, terrorism, paedophilia, animal testing, public hysteria and political bullshit. It makes South Park look like My Little Pony, and I f***ing love it.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
Monkey Dust takes aim at the dark side of modern Britain, and no stone is left unturned as it attacks every aspect of its contemporary society with ruthless derision. It is a truly pinnacle example of that very British style of satirical humour, wherein the principle of, if you can't laugh, you have to cry, reigns supreme, and no limits to the scope of comedy are recognised. Everything is fair game, nothing is sacred.
Hey, you're a bonny wee lad with a bonny wee name, eh?
Oh, piss off.
Some sketches are dark and brutal for its own sake. One of the most notable involves the recurring characters of Timmy and his divorced, out-of-touch father.
Wait here for a second, Timmy, while Daddy just goes to the bedroom.
And others explore taboo subjects that no other comedy of the time would dare, as with Jeff, the first-time cottager, whose attempts to cottage, which is a very British term by the way, usually end with hilarious results. But aside from the forbidden and shocking, Monkey Dust targets everything that its writers considered crap with the world around them. From Hollywood movies that take ridiculous liberties with historical events, Braveheart.
To be sure, Saladin, you can kill our families, but you'll never kill the crack.
Silence! Who can possibly save you here?
Did someone call for us?
Oh no!
To reality TV.
Hello and welcome back to the People on the Toilet House. Now, Elaine doesn't know it, but last week we slipped her some 3-week-old squid. Woo! So, get your brollies out. It's time for Mount Krakatoa.
Pubs rebranding themselves in order to stay in business.
There you are then. That'll be £1.70 for the beer and £38.50 for the pan-fried potato discs dusted with roquefort and shallot.
Middle-class yuppies and their inane conversations.
We did think about getting stainless steel PowerPoints, but you know, we thought that'd just be too industrial.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone, but isn't all this just bollocks?
Self-important cyclists.
We are the cyclists, and we are many. Our prime directive is to protect the environment. Everything we purchase is eco-friendly, apart from our lycra clothes, which are made in a sweatshop in the Philippines.
And incompetent police.
We are still hoping to trace this man, witnessed at the scene of the crime by 5 separate witnesses. And we're also keen to trace the gentleman spotted by Dr. Harris himself acting suspiciously in the months prior to the attack.
But we did get into trouble on this.
Yeah, we got into real trouble on this because I think one woman did a report and it said that it had no conceivable merit, the entire series, and singled out this sketch.
Didn't she say just not funny?
Well, this sketch, she said, was particularly unfunny. You know, it was a dreadful, dreadful thing.
In addition to making you laugh, Monkey Dust's humour is intended to provide a social commentary dripping in cynicism and sardonic wit. Beneath the veneer of crudeness, you'll find a surprising amount of intelligence and thought-provoking analysis. For instance, Ivan Dobsky, the meat-safe murderer, although he never done it,
only said I done it so they wouldn't give me another jalfrezy enema.
As well as giving the writers the chance to wax nostalgically about 1970s culture, pokes fun at the failure to reintegrate long-term prisoners back into society. Almost every sketch in Monkey Dust has something to say, and even if you don't laugh, and sometimes you won't because the show can be quite hit or miss at times, you'll probably nod your head in agreement and think to yourself, yeah, that thing is crap, isn't it? But the show doesn't take sides, except insofar as it thinks that everything is shite.
I see. That explains everything.
It makes fun of paedophiles,
Benji? Charlotte?
but it also ridicules the hate mobs that rise up in reaction to them.
There's one! How'd you know? He's wearing a hat!
And the hysteria that grips them is embodied in the Pedofinder General and all the twisted, disturbing logic he employs.
By the powers invested in me by a text vote on Sky News, I find you guilty of pedophilia.
What? I demand an appeal.
Your appeal has already been filed. Pedophiles! Now that's what I call a showstopper.
The question of whether or not the show ever goes too far depends on your definition, but it can never be described as bigoted. Arguably it comes closest with a recurring sketch concerning an illegal immigrant, but the point there is more to make fun of both the unrealistic expectations these immigrants can have and comment on the demeaning way in which many of them are treated, rather than to mock the immigrants themselves. Mixed in with the brutal jokes and social jabs are doses of the subversive and surreal, with sketches turning our expectations on their heads.
And you, darling, were not adopted. So yes, you probably will end up looking like your mummy.
But she's got a massive arse. Can you not check again?
Or setting up absurd scenarios for a worthwhile punchline. The humour here is very Python-esque, and the writers often pay tribute to some of the comedy legends who obviously inspired them. Monkey Dust takes its subject matter and exaggerates it to the point of absurdity in order to throw it back in our faces and make us think about it. The world it presents is a grotesque caricature that nevertheless hits rather too close to home.
And, what about the,
Yes. Well, this is the NHS.
This effect is aided by the show's unique presentation. Its sketches were produced by a variety of animators and production companies, showing off a range of different visual styles, but all united by the show's satirical themes. All the imagery feels slightly off, and I believe this was done partly with the intention of unnerving the viewer. Through this twisted lens, they are forced to see just how unsettling and ridiculous their world really is. In the effort to create this dark tapestry, it's no exaggeration to say that these sketches were quite literally stitched together, for they were designed with the intention of being closely interlinked. Characters, elements, and ideas from one sketch are almost always referenced in the one that follows it. The extent of this interconnection helped to prevent some of the more controversial material from being cut, for if it was, continuity would be broken and the episode would be notably out of sync. And considering that each episode cost around £350,000 to produce, any objectionable sketches would be too expensive to redo, although despite this, a few things did have to be cut.
Yeah, and in fact, this was one of the sketches that got most heavily censored because we got quite vicious about what wasn't in Curtis Land, and we got quite vicious about the attitudes that people might have.
But the main purpose of these links is to give the impression that we are being taken on a guided tour, being shown a sweeping overview of this degenerate society as a whole. Another distinctive feature of the show in this regard is a nocturne sequence in each episode, showing some of its characters in their bedrooms, offering us a brief, intimate glimpse into their private, sordid world, accompanied by depressing music that hammers home the point. Speaking of which, the soundtrack is phenomenal, featuring tracks from the likes of Goldfrapp, Eels and Black Box Recorder, which perfectly complement both what's happening on screen and the mood the show seeks to convey. Unfortunately, I can't play you much of it because this is YouTube, and using copyrighted music is the quickest way to get your ad revenue stolen, and in fact the show's extensive use of music would cause problems further down the line. But if nothing else, you should definitely give the soundtrack a listen.
This is the dog's bollocks.
Going back to the humour, it could be said that Monkey Dust can be repetitive, with some of the recurring jokes following the exact same formula to a predictable conclusion. This is sometimes the case, but it never gets as bad as something like Little Britain. I personally would say that there's enough one-off sketches mixed in with the recurring ones to prevent the show from becoming stale, and that there's enough variety within the recurring sketches themselves to avoid this problem. The show even makes reference to its repetitiveness, and then subverts it.
So let's just get straight to the point, shall we? Excuse?
I got lost on the common.
Theme?
Scott's Polar Expedition, 1911-12.
Reality?
I was being tagged in a pub toilet.
A more interesting question is whether or not Monkey Dust stands the test of time. It's a simple fact that some comedy does not. Spitting Image, for example, because it's set out to provide a satirical take on the specific political and cultural events and personalities of its day, is now extremely dated because most of its jokes come at the expense of figures who have fallen from public attention or are now barely recognisable. Monkey Dust does suffer from this problem to some extent. References to popular celebrities of the day such as Sven-Göran Eriksson and David Baddiel will probably be lost on modern audiences, and some sketches are definitely products of their time.
I tell you what, the way this internet's expanding, I think we're going to have to take someone else on.
But the vast majority of Monkey Dust's material concerns things that are either still with us today or are so universal that they will always be recognisable, like ridiculous politicians' promises,
England to win every sporting event in the world every week of the year, trains that actually turn up,
manipulative public relations campaigns.
Let's make cancer an opportunity.
Congratulations! You've got closure.
Thank God for that.
The lengths people will go to secure 15 minutes of fame.
Come on, Fran. You can do it. They're only insects. Now, you know you can do it.
And that most universal of phenomenon, pretentious wankers.
Mobile to mobile, man to man. The whole world's gone homotextual.
Ringtones are the piercings of the new millennium.
I've had my labia barcoded.
All of which makes Monkey Dust as relevant and insightful now as it was 15 years ago. Which begs the question, which I'm sure you're all asking, if this show is so good, why haven't I heard of it? As I said earlier, Monkey Dust has never been rebroadcast since its initial run. Only the first series was released on DVD. The second and third series were released for download on iTunes but are now no longer available. Thus, Monkey Dust has languished in obscurity, unknown to all but its enthusiastic cult following. Various explanations have been offered for this. The soundtrack is almost certainly a factor. Some artists refused to allow their music to be used on the first season DVD, so their tracks had to be changed. And rumour has it that issues with music licensing meant that the second and third seasons couldn't be released. But to remove the music entirely would be to rip out an integral part of the show, and given the show's low viewership figures towards the end, you can see why the BBC didn't feel the need to press the issue. Another popular theory among its fans, which I'm partly inclined to believe, is that it has something to do with the second and third seasons including what is probably the most controversial recurring sketch in the entire show, the Rubbish Terrorists.
Allah Akbar.
Allah Akbar!
This follows the misadventures of a homegrown terrorist cell as they attempt to wage a jihad for the liberation of the Islamic Republic of Great Britain, but fail spectacularly due to their own incompetence and their inability to overcome the influence of the British culture in which they've been raised.
It's a Mr. Cobra of death for you.
Tell him I'll call him back at halftime.
This was before the bombings of July 7th, 2005, which brought the realities of the jihad to our doorsteps with full effect for the first time. The creators had planned a spin-off series based on the rubbish terrorists, but Shaun himself said that the bombings were the death knell of that show, and it is highly likely that the potential public backlash was the final nail in the coffin for any hope that Monkey Dust would ever again see a widespread release. Which is a shame, because Monkey Dust is one of the finest examples of black comedy, British satire and adult animation that has ever been produced. It was truly the swan song for Harry Thompson, who died of lung cancer in the same year the final series aired. He chose to keep his diagnosis quiet and continued to work on the show despite his health, determined to pursue his vision to the bitter end, and thus passed one of the most visionary comedians of his age. Not only does Monkey Dust represent the pinnacle of Thompson's talents, but it embodies the type of comedy that can only be achieved when comedians are allowed to fearlessly create and comment without having to compromise too much or worry too much about hurting anyone's feelings. It's a time capsule of an age when comedy had far fewer limits, when comedians didn't have to worry about their old edgy tweets being used to ruin their careers, before certain jokes could get you arrested under hate speech laws, and when the BBC actually had the balls to allow creators to push the boundaries of what was considered good taste. And that's why I love Monkey Dust. It is everything that I believe comedy should be. Fearless, provocative, insightful, and giving absolutely zero f***s what you think. If you're at all interested in dark, taboo humour, satirical comedy, and mature animation, you owe it to yourself to check out Monkey Dust.
He's wet the sheets again. You're such a girl.
The first series is still available on DVD, and a variety of clips from the show can be found online, including on YouTube for those who would seek them out. But if you only take one thing away from this video, let it be this valuable life lesson.
Whatever you do, young man, don't stray off the path.
Oh, why not?
'Cause that's where all the cottages are, on the path. You gets more cock if you stays on the path.
Thanks for watching, folks. I'd like to say a big thank you to my supporters on Patreon. If you like what I'm doing here, feel free to check out some of my other videos and maybe become a patron yourself. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram and join my subreddit and public Discord server. Links to all those are in the description. Next up is another addition to my terrible movies series. Oh joy. So yeah, until then.